Welcome in to the Glasgow Regional. We are joined by myself, David Toombs, and Sam Tate and Christopher Bromley. We have over 75 players registered for this tournament today. That means that we're going to be going 7 rounds. We have an awesome round 1 pairing just about queued up for us right now. But before we jump into round 1, this is the first event after maybe the largest and most consequential ban list in my whole time as a UniVersus player. And we're going to, I think, see some major meta shakeups. Sam, what are you most excited for going into this regional?
Well, I think the most exciting thing is after any ban list, there has to be some level of adaptation, right? There has to be some deck that emerges from the fold, or at least hopefully. When you ban cards, you typically want to enable more decks. We're not just trying to completely scrub decks out of the format. At least I would hope that is the plan. So we want to see the emergence of decks that are no longer held down by cards like the 9 Titans throughout the ages. We want to see the high difficulty attacks, the 4-check attacks that Sweeping Daggers was keeping out of the format. And hopefully, without the presence of Pony or Titan Cliff, the ultra consistent aggro decks will take a little bit of a step back and we'll get some more back and forth, 3-turn, 4-turn, more mid-rangey style games. I definitely saw some characters that want to maybe open up into what we would call a mid-range play style. We saw some overhaul on the player chart. We saw a couple of really interesting symbol combinations with life and order characters, which is not a very popular symbol pairing. But Bromley, what do you think this new format is going to have for us? What do you think the UK players are going to adapt in the face of this brand new metagame that they basically get to write the script for?
I mean, so the last time we went abroad, we saw a lot of Godzilla. A lot of Godzilla. And I have been sort of frantically going through the list here to see, exactly what is the big, the big show at this event. It's not Godzilla. I mean, from what I can tell. And so it seems like the ban list of just Titan Cliff going, right, it hit the consistency of the deck enough that people said, no, this isn't the big one for this event. I am not privy to the breakdown yet. Do you know what the most represented character of this event is so far?
No, we don't have the breakdown just yet. We don't have that data compiled exactly. I just, I snooped a bit. I went snooping through.
Yeah, I just been, going through. There's still, the Zeeks. There's still the Mikasas, right? There's still a couple of these equipment heist sort of decks that are around here. I saw an Elder Tiguro. I saw a Devilgen still out there in the wings. But it's interesting because this is the first event after a ban list, which is usually the most experimental, I'll say. And especially being out abroad, in the UK players are known for showing up with the same deck, right? They sort of all commit to, hey, this is the thing we're playing, and so we're gonna see if what they think is the coolest thing to play at this event today.
Yeah, and a character that had a really, really strong start when they became legal, and then they kind of fell off in representation is back here. We're going to go ahead and head to our round 1 matchup. We have Pieck versus Ryu. So this, Pieck, 6 hand size, 29 health. This is like a classic mid-range character, very, very strong stat manipulation. Both on offense and on defense, can hit assets as well. I think, like you said, Sam, with the aggro in the meta kind of going down just a little bit, this might be the time for Pieck to come back in and shine. And then also another kind of mid-range type character here with Ryu, where we're adding in the damage, and then when something is blocked, we get to look at, draw 3 cards. Very, very interesting matchup here. Who do you think has the upper hand?
Well, I think the upper hand probably goes to Pieck. I think that Pieck just has better stat manipulation. The cost on Pieck is pretty fair, though. I will say, I think a big reason why Pieck wasn't super popular and really one of the the best decks in the format throughout most of this year is because of constantly churning through the foundations in your stage compared to the strategies of other decks just wasn't economic enough. You know, there weren't enough reinforcements, there weren't enough enormous axes, there weren't enough colossus swats in the format to really be able to afford all these extra resources that Pieck needs to keep up with everyone else, you know, compared to Ryu, whose stats are basically free, right? He's a tenacious character, so he's willing to commit himself, and he just gives +2 damage on everything, no muss, no fuss. So while Pieck is very, very powerful in that stat manipulation, comparing it to the Titan Cliff decks and the Pony decks that basically aren't spending resources from their stage, they are simply adding resources as they go. It's just a different game plan altogether, and you would much rather have a game plan where you're adding resources rather than spending them. But it looks like Ryu's leading things off here with, is this a 3 difficulty attack?
Yeah, this is the ultimate can't go wrong on the check as a poke here. Both players with really strong builds. Ryu got out sacrifice for the sacrifice for the cause. You can discard a card and get +X damage according to the block modifier. And on the Pieck side, we built Ambition of Irwin Smith, probably the best foundation that Pieck could possibly build on turn one. Every single time we destroy once per turn, we get to draw a card. And then when we're really ready to kill our rival, we can sack it to selectively commit a rival foundation. So looks like we're immediately seeing Ambition of Irwin Smith come into play here. We went ahead, sacked our 0 diff, and we're going to get to draw into something better. I wonder if we just don't have the right block for Besiege.
Yeah, it's a really common strategy right now. And one of the things that kind of, I guess, kept Besiege, you know, low in the format was all the death damage reduction decks. It's a 4 damage move. It's hard to block, but 4 damage is not hard to remove. So it's one of those things where cards like Greater Goal were really keeping this down. But we now see Pieck does the sacrifice for minus speed. We are going to get the transformation, which will allow us to go get this anti-Titan artillery asset. Just kind of get this card out of our deck. It's the signature Pieck finger asset, basically. But with the new unique rule, we probably won't see too much more searching of the deck. However, Ryu has just got a really simple attack here. It's really slow. It's pretty punishing, and it looks like we're reading Sacrifice for the Cause now. Sacrifice for the Cause is a very, very powerful 3 difficulty foundation because it has the ability to pump the damage on all your cards, on all your attacks by discarding a card and getting damage equal to the block modifier. But it also can cancel a character ability, which Pieck has. Pieck has a character ability that reduces damage. So we're going to have to watch out for that one. But Showdown block coming in huge.
Yeah, this is a gnarly +3 block modifier to have in our hand. We selectively take down, it looks like, the defensive cards from you because, you know, if Ryu's leading with the 3 difficulty attack, we're kind of sensing that this is probably a one and done type of attack. And it's not completely blocked, which is a huge benefit here because we're not letting Ryu draw 3 cards and stack their deck.
Yeah, I actually really dig the idea of getting the partial block off here. It's pretty awful most of the time to partial block a 6 damage move and let the rivals still get the momentum out of it, you know, and utilize such a strong block like Showdown on the partial, but specifically against Ryu, it can really help you out not letting him fix the top of the deck or anything like that. But we are going to see a review from Pieck coming down. 3 cards in hand for our Ryu player. The question is, David, is 4 foundations enough for Pieck to be aggressive here, especially since we're starting on the backside? We won't have access to the first E or the enhanced commit to start off our attacks, but we're starting off with a chomp instead.
Yeah, no, this is fascinating. We get to selectively blow up one of our rivals' foundations that's 2 difficulty or less. So we can't go for the sack. Looks like we go for one of Ryu's foundations. And yeah, I don't think that this is a turn to really go in. I don't think the 4 foundations is enough. We don't have anything that really replaces itself beyond ambition. Kind of, if you can build the card that you drew, you effectively replaced the foundation that you blew up. But we are going to go ahead and play this Mikasa's Fatal Cleave. So this is a really interesting spin on Pieck that I haven't seen much of, where we're really going for foundation destruction. It looks like this almost looks like a Reiner 1 attack and action lineup.
Yeah, very much so. The resource denial here. You typically don't see decks playing Chomp unless they're gonna full sell for the resource denial. And I love Mikasa's Fatal Cleave because in a world with backups, this is one of the few cards where it can deal damage to a backup and still get its response trigger. They played it pretty safe with most of the designs where nowadays, if it says deals damage, it usually has to specify whether it means to a character or to a backup. And Mikasa's Fatal Cleave does not. So anytime it deals damage, you get to target destroy a rival foundation, which is, or I guess selectively destroy. We don't
Mm.
specifically target in this game, but selective destruction is always better than letting the rival choose.
Yeah, we're really putting a lot of pressure here on Ryu to have the low block. We
Oh,
added 3 speed to this, so this should be a 7-speed move. That's going to be difficult, but Ryu can manage it. And, knowing that there's a Chomp in there and that Pieck is going to want to build, I think if we have a low block, we're definitely going to fully commit out to get it.
yeah. One thing that's interesting though is it looked like we botonsed away a barrier shield. So while 7 speed is manageable, 0 speed would have been a lot better to deal with. So we of course
Oh,
have a second barrier shield though.
yeah, this is really going to hurt Pieck too. So we did transform to front side and we did build off the top of our deck, but we stuffed our own card pool with the Chomp leading into the Mikasa's Fatal Cleave. And so now Breaker 2 after this is really going to hurt our ability to build. And we're committing our moment of normalcy to try and get this back to 4 speed. But there's still a block off, but it's a half block. So we are going to get to selectively destroy something, but the Breaker 2 is going to heavily hurt our build.
Yeah, this is really strange. This kind of didn't work out for anyone. This is
Yeah.
not what any player really wanted to see, right? The Ryu player definitely doesn't want a partial block here after using the barrier shield. The Pieck player doesn't want to deal with the breaker too, but the Ryu player also doesn't want to have their foundations destroyed here. But the Ryu player really would have liked to do their response on a complete block instead of a partial. So I guess it's a good compromise when nobody's happy, right, David?
Yeah, yeah. Let's see where things go. I think Pieck is thinking about playing another attack. I can't imagine going for that though. That is so risky. Okay, no. We're pulling back,
And
and
it
we
was
did
a
check
good thing
poorly.
too.
Yeah, we're checking a 1.
Yeah, we'd have to commit basically all the way out for that Dwaithvar the Star Razor, which is a pretty solid asset overall. E-commit, Seal 1 Rival Foundation would have been really nice to have in our stage. However, it's not going to work out that way. Our turn is ended by the Breaker too. So again, not what we wanted to see as a Ryu. You want to see complete blocks over partial blocks. However, you got to think with double barrier shield in hand, we were able to basically review one via Botons. We played one to get it out of our hand. We got the partial block off to stop our opponent from attacking us. We basically bought ourselves a turn because our rival didn't even get to build after that. And now we've got Bullet Kick on the way.
Yeah, Bullet Kick, very spicy inclusion into these void lists. Basically, it says if this deals damage, you can add a non-attack card from your discard pile to your hand. So we could just add that barrier shield that we discarded back to our hand. We can add any of our actions. After this attack is blocked, our rival spends a momentum. So a little bit of a win-win card, but our rival gets to make the choice as to which ability we get. But yeah, back to that Pieck turn. We're playing a resource denial deck, but we were the ones that ended up getting denied resources. And now Pieck's only on 4 foundations. We had to sacrifice a foundation Here, now we're only to 3. I mean, it's kind of funny that the Pieck is on the resource denial deck, but they're the ones that at the resource disadvantage, and a pretty heavy one.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing, right? Where it's typically better to do your own thing more than trying to stop your rival from doing something. And I dig the idea that the Pieck deck is saying, well, I sacrifice a lot of resources. So instead of trying to ramp them to keep up with you, despite sacrificing them, I will make you sacrifice with me.
Mm.
Unfortunately, the breaker keyword functions like debuild in mass when your rival can't pass their checks, though. You know, that turn stopping power is potentially the strongest mechanic in UniVersus. So check hacking is definitely a favorite of control players everywhere, and we see it in full force with the barrier shields. But do you think we're going to see the bullet kick get blocked, or are we getting this damage reduced? We don't really have a stat
Oh, it's getting
tracker on the table that
yeah,
you
but
and I
he
can see
he
at
blew
least.
up he blew up 2 foundations, so that he blew up a foundation to get to the reverse side, and then blew up another foundation for the minus speed. So looks like the block did come in, and now he gets to pick up any non-attack card that he likes.
Yeah. And what's really cool is because these are both responses, you can sequence it however you want. You know, you can look at what you're going to
Oh
draw
wait,
and
your
look at
rival spends 1 momentum. Sorry. It's after it deals damage that you get to add from the discard pile. Sorry, I was just
oh, okay.
correcting myself.
Fair enough. Well, we still get both block triggers, which are cool because um the 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 Ryu gets to now look at what his next check is going to be, which can help him play really aggressive lines. And I wonder if there's something we can actually use this face down in our card pool for, or if that's just, you know, a byproduct of bullet kick.
Yeah, I think that's probably gonna be more of a byproduct. I think bullet kick is fascinating. Um, it does have that powerful 3. It's base 5 speed, and Ryu's not adding speed, so we do want that. You know, Besiege is 3 speed, but it kind of functions as like pseudo 6 speed. And the Besiege
Yeah.
just gets through. I mean, Pete can't be spending any more resources here.
Yeah, it looks like Besiege is just gonna punch on through, do its job, hit for 6, get into the greasy numbers. Or I guess maybe did we reduce on that? Looks
No,
like-
no, there was just a, hey, I'm taking the full Besiege. And then if I'm Ryu, I think I would aggressively build. I wouldn't even mind tapping the entire stage. I mean, Peak's only on 2 foundations. We haven't seen a the 6 difficulty that builds to. We haven't seen it quite yet, but man, Ryu checking all of their attacks here on this build. And
Yeah, there's a couple of tricks that the Ryu decks typically like to have. Um, you know, the rising uppercut is typically a favorite of these decks. So blocking is not necessarily down to what you have in stage, but we're not actually rocking the rising uppercut tech here. So we are going to have to actually use incubating basically to full potential here as our only defense. And luckily, it was the right call to build out as much as possible because Pieck was pretty much going to be forced to take a build turn off, take a turn off, and we still only built 3 foundations, right? The building back up to a 5 build, we have now achieved what the average deck wants to do on turn 1, like turn 4 turns into the game, David. This can't feel good for the Pieck player, regardless of where the health totals are at. I mean, we're at a healthy life total, but board state wise, we're lagging pretty far behind.
yeah, yeah, all the tempo is on Ryu's side. Um, you know, and that's going to happen to Peak a lot of games. You're going to have to take a turn off to take a build turn, but you don't want that to be necessarily turn turn 3. You know, like that
Right.
can be on turn 5 once you just went on a crazy 7 attack string, and maybe it didn't quite get there. But a second one of Ryu's main foundation, which I'll confess I need to go read up on just a little bit here. But we're getting a hacker extraordinaire, going to be very powerful with 2 momentum. We're going to get to flip that anti-Titan artillery, although that might kind of work out to Pieck's benefit because now we could go and build a unique anti-Titan artillery, and it helps us get a foundation. So it'll be interesting to see if he chooses to flip the anti-Titan artillery or not. But either way, Ryu is in a very healthy place with his hand size with the hacker extraordinaire.
Yeah, I think flipping the anti-Titan artillery could be a big mistake here, especially if Pieck does have a second copy somewhere left in the deck to search out. Pieck is weirdly versatile, I guess, in that way. I think most people only play one of the asset now that the new unique rule is in effect, though. So and you can only search your deck. You don't get to search your discard pile either. So Pieck would have to have one in the deck, but we see another chomp play into an Earthshaker, but this Earthshaker is going to check a 3, so we're going to have to commit pretty much half our stage, a little more than half our stage. However, we are very lucky that we built 2 enormous acts.
Yeah, that's really going to recoup a lot of the cost here. It's interesting that on both attacks turns, we're choosing to lead with the chomp, which I do understand, leading with the chomp to take out a foundation. Like, we got rid of that pesky hacker so that we get to keep our asset. But it is adding to the progressive difficulty for our attacks, and it's kind of showing our hand to our rival that, hey, we're not really going to go in on this attack turn, because if we were, we wouldn't be adding +1 to our progressive difficulty when we only have 5 foundations. So it's kind of telling our rival that this is just probably going to be a poke. And we really see a lot of pressure on the low zone here, where, hey, if this deals damage, I'm going to get to destroy something again.
It would be, David, except for in a perfect world, Pieck wants to be sacrificing foundations, and in a perfect world, we play the Earthbreaker on a 6, we check a 5, and we commit 1 card, which we were going to sacrifice basically no matter what. And in this instance, it'd be a card that we'd sacrifice to get a ready foundation back. So this Pieck deck, I think, is built with the intention of adding that +1 progressive difficulty on the attack turns, with the express purpose that Pieck wants to be sacrificing foundations anyways to get stats. And so having ways to proactively commit foundations, is a big part of those game plans. Back in the day, using cards like Rescue Completed, using cards like Friend of Animals, ways to commit foundations during 1.3 million volts, those used to be really, really effective, efficient ways to get every ounce of utility out of your stage that you could. And I think Pieck is trying to do that with the chomps. It's just not working out with these checks. And if we see another barrier shield come down on a turn like we did before, this could spell absolute disaster, having checked poorly. Even though we got to use most of those foundations we committed anyways.
Yeah, if I was Ryu, I would be holding on to every low block. Yeah, and here we see that we did hold on to 1. We've got Rifle Arm. So we are not going to have the foundation destruction of Earthbreaker actually come into play here.
Oh, and now we see the unending path, that 3-diff foundation you were just talking about a little bit before. Not a unique foundation, just a once per turn. After an attack is blocked, you get to look at the top 2 cards of your deck. You can add 1 of them to your discard pile. And then if your rival has 10 or more foundations, you draw a card. So basically, we are just scoping out the cards that we want to potentially draw with Ryu. We're going to mill cards that we don't want to draw, and then we can do our response to draw 3 cards and stack a card from our hand on top.
Yeah, that only costs 1 of them. So if we completely block again, we can scope out and I guess kind of guarantee our check. But it looks like it's just going to be a build. We're getting an airship here.
Now,
very good thing we got rid of the hacker. Yeah.
That's a good hacker target, especially now that Pieck has a bit of a stage. Pieck is up to what, 6 foundations? At least 1 of them is an enormous axe. So the idea of giving Pieck a foundation over an asset is not quite as big of a deal. I think there's also the weapon clash there. So weapon clash can flip to generate a committed face down, which for characters
Mhm.
like Pieck, that functions as basically just minus stats for free.
Yeah, I have to imagine that we're essentially seeing it mostly for
Looks
the
like
free build on the card than the minus damage.
Looks like we got an oldie but a goodie. Ryu has revived this card pretty much single-handedly. It's Rewind Throttle. This is a nasty little bugger of a card. Discard a card, commit one rival foundation. What a rate. What an absolutely just amazing rate for a 4 div. Discarding a card to snipe a card in the rival stage is absolutely worth it so much of the time, and it becomes even better when you have the enhance. If you have discarded a card during this attack, you get to draw a card anyway, David.
Yeah, so it's basically a free, a filter one plus a selective commit, and it's a high base speed. So we're not adding speed as Ryu. We don't have a lot of speed adds in our stage. So we really want our attacks to start with 5 speed instead of 4 or 3.
Yeah, this is a great one. A 5/5 for 5. Draw me a new card. Get rid of your best foundation, your unique moment of normalcy, or I guess in this case it's the ambition of Irwin, Just get that out of the way to start things off. Absolutely great stuff. It this card is, I think, like peak power level. It's super super strong. It's not overbearing. I don't think anyone's ever wanted Rewind Throttle to get banned, but this card it's a powerhouse. It's a workhorse. It's a journeyman card. It does its job.
Yeah, and it's going to feed into, we're going to see a block. And this is really nice that we kind of forced Pieck to spend resources to block this because it's fast. But we have such a good stage here on Ryu. We get to draw 3. First, we're going to scope out our draws to make sure we're drawing into attacks. We have momentum. So if we want to do like the double fists, echoes, we could do that. If we want to play repeated, we have momentum for the EX and for the powerful, and rewind throttles a punch, which means we're really going to be able to ready our stage. I wouldn't be shocked if we're looking at the winning turn.
Yeah, with the amount of cards, the amount of resources we've generated over our opponent, the fact that we're almost certainly going to check well on a rejuvenating smash right here. I'm calling it. There's got to be a rejuve smash in hand. We've got to have a good check on top. I want to see it. It's got to be time, right? Oh, okay. Well, all right. Double rewind throttle is pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, the big drawback of rewind throttle is just the 3 damage, but Ryu's overcoming it to some extent, making it 5. And if we had sacrifice for the cause, we could get it even higher. But it looks like the sacrifice for the cause was taken
Toasted. We
down by.
used it a while ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sacrifice for the cause is absolutely massive in a deck like this, because once you've sort of exploited your opponent's defenses, it again, Ryu's a very simple guy. He puts the damage on things, and he has a little bit extra selection. He gets a little bit extra knowledge than the opponent, drawing some extra cards, but mostly it's only if you engage with him, right? So while rewind throttle is not super impressive on the damage side of things, if you choose not to engage with these attacks, that's a fifth of your health gone for free. So you can't just sit there and take these all day.
But I was
However,
a little surprised that Pieck blocked the first one because that really set Ryu up with getting to
correct.
use the character ability. I think I would have probably taken the first throttle. And now we got Trigrav coming in here, going to be absolutely punishing. If we have any sort of, if Pieck has anything in their hand that's going to save them, it's going to get ripped right now. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, it was an absolute
we had a killer backswing, didn't
fire.
we?
Yeah.
We had a great backswing next turn, didn't we? Yeah,
It's like,
it's crazy. We talk about the tri-gravity beam coming in here as a killer. This attack gives you pretty much perfect knowledge for the rest of the turn. You don't know necessarily what your opponent's going to check, but you get to rip the best card out of their hand. You know what their block zones are. I guess, here the rival does have access to the airship, right? So we could airship something back to hand, but you now know the likelihood of your attacks dealing damage for the rest of this turn. So that's going to help Ryu out a whole lot. And again, Try Gravity Beam is just another attack where you can reliably stack damage. This is another example of where we really, really wish we had a card like Sacrifice for the Cause.
Yeah, I think on peak stage, they did not transform back to the front side. So they're going to try and get another block here from the speed. And then whenever they're basically saying we're all done blocking, they want to transform back so that they can have access to the minus damage. We once again chose not to transform. Because Ryu's not adding speed, I could see getting a block here and maybe an additional block later. But the 3-check's not going to help that cause.
Yeah, luckily Pieck has some pretty powerful speed
Oh,
reduction, so we're
yeah.
still gonna pass the check. Ryu is gonna use the unending path. There's that rejuve, unfortunate, but we are gonna be able to mill it off the top, so we won't check it, which means we're almost certainly gonna check a 5 here on our next attack. And is it? It's a besiege.
And we know that this is unblockable now after we peeked their hand with the trigraph. So this besiege is going to get up to 6 damage with Ryu. That's going to put Pieck down to 10. Pieck cannot use the damage reduction on the front side because that is a first enhance. So even if they transform back, they can't use it. Oh, but they can airship the weapon clash to their hand to have a block. Defensive application of airship coming in here. It is going to freeze it for our turn, but we would just like to see our turn first.
Yeah, but it is going to be a partial block either way, which I don't think helps us too much. Blocking 3 damage it's definitely better than doing nothing. It's better than rolling over and dying. So I'm down to see a pretty much free block here. We did sacrifice the foundation for it, but Ryu's progressive difficulty is building up. We've managed to not commit anything yet because of all of the amazing abilities to stack our deck, but we've run out of ways to check the top card of our deck, and it looks like we've run out of ways to push the offense. So without being able to remove a card from the game to get bonus damage on Tri Gravity, without being able to whittle through our opponent's hand, I mean, we had 4 cards when Tri Gravity ripped the card out. That is plenty of cards to block with. Pieck managing to show why this character is so strong. It is that versatility. If you throw away your stage every turn, you are pretty hard to kill.
Yeah, and that was the kind of turn where Ryu really wanted to see repeated 100%, so that
Yeah.
they could get around the progressive difficulty, so they could get the damage up and utilize that momentum because they're sitting on a stack down there of momentum that's going to come into play at some point in this game, either on the bullet kicks or the repeateds. But Pieck now at a very, very healthy stage. This whole game has been about Pieck just trying to stabilize essentially since that breaker 2 from turn 2. So can they survive one more turn? We know that they're holding on to at least 2 or 3 attacks at their hand. Can they survive and get into their turn with the sculpted hand and enough resources to play the attacks?
Yeah, that's that's the beauty of Pieck. That's the strength of Pieck, and that is what makes Pieck so frustrating is the fact that every turn it feels like they're just stabilizing. But if they're stabilizing, they're not losing. And that's really important. The Pieck decks struggle to ever look like they're winning, at least when I watch them, but they have amazing come from behind victories. They'll be losing at 1 health the whole game, and then all of a sudden they play 5-4 difficulty attacks on 1 foundation and they make your head spin and you've lost the game somehow. So you cannot underestimate these decks. They are so slippery, so versatile, right? It's that versatility that draws people in the first place, plus speed, plus damage, minus speed, minus damage, everything you need to pick how you want to play defense. And I love the attack lineup from this Ryu deck. We've got the Attack Titans Haymaker here. Similar to Besiege, it has a blitz ability on it that kind of dictates how your rival gets to play defense against it. And Ryu is basically saying, instead of pumping speed on attacks, I am just going to dictate which cards you're allowed to block with, up to and including looking at your hand and removing cards from it.
Yeah, I am a little surprised that Pieck said -4 damage by destroying the I'm with you and responding with it. and they subtracted the speed. I wonder if they did that just to get back to the front side and build in case this was just a poke turn for Ryu, but a little bit interesting to go for both. You know, a lot of times you're just trying to subtract speed or you're just trying to subtract damage because you don't want to be spending too many of your resources. Oh my gosh, the ambition of Irwin Smith coming in right now. They say we want to get down that web of blades. Web of blades saying that, you know, if you enter the block step, you get +2 on your stats if it's below printed, and a showdown block coming here. So the selective committal from ambition, 2 selective committals from showdown. It's not going to let the Ryu response go. Let's see which 2 foundations they decide to take down here. But with the Ryu checking a 3 on the leadoff, this selectively committing 3 could go a long way.
Yeah, so this is a pretty interesting board state here. We've got the unending path here, responding on block as the active player first. I believe there's only 1 card in the deck, so we get to look at the top 2, but this time it's only 1, and we can discard it if we want, which will cause us to cycle, which it looks like we do, which I think is interesting because Ryu could have drawn that card and then cycled and then put a card on top after we cycled, which we would have drawn the repeated 100%.
I think repeated is just a game winner here, unless Pieck had a reset. And
Yeah,
it kind of allows you to come back into the game after this committing 3 because the repeated gets to ready 2. So I'm very surprised that we didn't just choose to draw the repeated.
yeah, maybe does the unending path force you to mill them? It's mill any number, right? Look at the top 2, add any number of them to your discard pile. Interesting. Yeah, it looks like we could have just drawn it, and I mean, we might have another copy in hand. We do have quite a few cards in hand, but yeah, a big part of the unending path is supposed to be finding the cards that you want to draw with Ryu. So I think that was a little bit of a mistake. It's not the end of the world. We're still in the driver's seat here. We've got double fists of the mortal flame, but our rival has committed 3 of our foundations. We're gonna check another 3 that's back-to-back 3s. We've got so much of our stage committed, David. We had a huge resource lead. We had a big stage, and now we're down to dire straits after just 2 cards played.
Yeah, like we were saying, Pieck is good at come from behind wins. I mean, geez, this is not great on the resources. We'd really like to be killing here. But
And this
a
is
full block is coming in.
this is Pieck with slippery defense. This is, you talked about how it's weird to reduce the speed and reduce the damage. But Pieck likes to stay on the front side to start each attack. And so transforming back makes sense. But if we're partial blocking, we are still getting value out of the damage reduction and the speed reduction both. So Pieck has really been utilizing these partial blocks really effectively. However, we're going to see the strength of double fists of the mortal flame here with the echo keyword. So we do get the first copy blocked by pushing the limits, but we're going to get to play a second copy here. And if we want, we can spend 2 life, or we can pay 2 life to get the momentum that we just used to echo back.
Yeah, it's essentially a free echo. The downside to this is that it's slow, and so we did see that Pieck chose not even to reduce the speed on the past one and just go for the block. They checked a 3, which cost a lot of resources in the stage, but I still think that Pieck could get 1 or 2 more blocks. We'll just see what happens here with what Ryu has to follow this up with, and if they can continue to check 5s instead of the 3s.
Yep, and it looks like this one, Ryu gave it the +2 damage, but Pieck gave it -4 because we blew up an I'm with you. So -2 from Pieck, -2 from I'm with you. That attack dealt 2 damage. Pieck's only at 9. This is exactly the cockroach levels of survivability that we've come to expect from most death decks, but especially death decks that can block.
Yeah, and this one, I'm a little confused by this one. Is this the
This
alternate art of bullet kick?
that is, yeah, I'm 99% sure.
Because
I
bullet
am
kick would
not.
be a good one here. We have effectively 9 or 12 damage in our momentum to add to this attack. Oh, and we're adding the speed with rifle arm. We're completely committed out now, or we just had to commit those to pass the check. Um,
Oh, and we're gonna
and there it
show
is.
a low
Yeah,
block to the powerful 3 high attack. So it looked like we were just counting out the momentum to make sure that it was lethal through the peak damage reduction, and bullet kick is gonna get the job done.
yeah, and that's interesting because had we kept the high block, had we chosen not to block one of those double fists of the mortal flames, effectively those the echo double fist was just trying to get the high blocks out of Peak's hand, and it worked because Peak
Yep.
could have blocked the bullet kick. There's no EX on bullet kick. It was very blockable had we held the high block.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you really got to ask yourself, what do I lose to in this situation? And it feels bad to pass up blocking on an attack that you have the zone for, but 4 damage, 6 damage, double fist of the mortal flame, that is not the threat. It's the repeated, it's the bullet kicks. And if you told me that Noah maybe got a little bit baited, maybe they thought to themselves, well, if my rival plays a powerful 3 attack, it's probably repeated 100% and it has EX and I can't block it anyways. So this high block is never blocking that attack. I'd believe
Mm.
it. I'd put myself in those shoes many, many times. But it's that bullet kick that got to sneak in the back door because we didn't respect it.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like a lot of times, I mean, bullet kick is not. You don't play against bullet kick as often as repeated, and it's easy to forget that it has the powerful 3, and it's also just easy to like you said, I mean, Peak was kind of in survival mode, and so it's easy to almost just on autopilot
Yeah.
try and block everything.
When you're down to single digits, you're trying to basically scrape together every health point you can, because on the flip side, if we don't block the double fist of the mortal flame, right? And then our rival just plays faster 4 speed, or faster, sorry, 4 difficulty attacks, down the pipeline, we're gonna regret not blocking the slower ones, right? We're gonna regret
Yeah.
not blocking the 3 speed move if we start getting killed by like rewind throttles. So there's a lot of there's a lot of decision points in universes where you definitely don't want to lose because you blocked uh a, a 4 damage move instead of a 12 damage move, but you also really don't want to lose because you chose not to block a slow move and then your opponent started playing fast moves, which, trying to decide where Ryu's going in the turn is so difficult because he's so versatile with all of these responses on block. What do you think the keys for game 2 are for Noah going first here with only 20 minutes left in the round? Because I'll tell you right now, they gotta stop blocking the first attack.
Yeah, that's 100%. And on offense, I want to see Peak have the tempo this game. Um I want to see a really strong build on turn 2. I really like when Peak takes it slow early, builds themselves up to 8 plus foundations, and then can just go nuclear on their rival, because I don't think Ryu has the defense beyond a single barrier shield or a single unarmed non-combatant breaker 2 block, to really be getting 3 or 4 blocks in a turn. Ryu's trying to, hey, I'm going to block 2 things. I've got a high health total. The breaker 2 is going to get me through this. But I think if Peak builds up to a healthy stage and then just really starts piling on the stats on a single attack string, that this is a very, very winnable matchup. I don't think that this is heavily Ryu favored. I think it's pretty 50-50 and dependent on player choices and sometimes the luck of the game that occurs. But I want to see Peak um, build up to a healthy stage. I don't want to see them put on the back foot for 5 turns because they didn't get a strong turn 2 build.
Yeah, and I mean, Pieck is absolutely the kind of deck here that can build 5 turn 1, have any number of them be cards that flip themselves for value, and then start playing cards like Battle Order Release turn 2, and all of a sudden you're staring down 4 high for 8s that become 7 high for 11 or
Mhm.
12 in Pieck, and they just generate massive, massive value, right? So Ryu can find himself in pretty much the exact same situation as we talked about um, last game, where you can end up with really, really difficult decisions on what to block because Peak is going to show you really high damaging, really, well statted moves, but there is still a hierarchy to it, right? There are still moves that are just better statted than others. And,
Mhm.
we've seen falling heel strikes, we've seen thunder spear barrages, we've seen fatal cleaves, but the cards that really tick up in numbers are the earthbreaker strings, the lunar rings after we've played
Mhm.
3 or 4 attacks and sacrificed everything, and that battle order release that counts up to 8 so easily, it seems. So I would love to see some really nice valuable pokes, like some falling heel strike tech. I
Oh,
love falling heel strike unflip games, so that's
because
what I want to see on turn 2 here.
yeah, I'm a little surprised by what just happened on Ryu's side. They went for the loot box on a 6, checked a 3 so they can't pass it, and now they lost a low block in hand, and that low block would have been really key for unarmed combatant to add the breaker 2 on. So if Peak starts off with a fatal cleave, it could really punish going for the build of the loot box.
Yeah,
But I
that's
guess we're going for high. We're it's a little bit different than last. Last game we were only seeing lows being played as the openers, and they were lows where if you don't block, your stage is getting blown up. But here we got the battle or release, and we saw a falling heel strike in hand, so going to be a little bit different this game.
Oh, and it looks like we immediately peak enhanced instead of doing the battle order release card draw. Is that
Yeah,
did I miss an enhance?
I'm a little surprised that Peak is choosing to transform here because they hard built anti Titan artillery turn one. Um,
I think they just noticed that they missed out on a free card draw and a little
yeah,
bit of damage, right? The correct sequencing here, of course, is flip the syndicate target to draw a card, get the bonus damage from having multiple face downs, then start doing your peak to sacrifice your stage. Because now we're getting the transformation back as well. We also, I guess, forgot to do the e commit to build, right? So
yeah, that's really what I would have liked to seen from the Peak here is, we're not going for turn two here. We're just trying to get a poke in. I would much rather see instead of blowing up on that first enhance, since we hard built anti-Titan artillery, we're under no pressure to go get an anti-Titan artillery. I would have rather just seen no stat manipulation for Peak, commit, build, and then we would have had 2 extra foundations to really go in for a turn 3. Not a big fan of destroying the 2 foundations, and now that's really going to put a lot of pressure on us on this 3 check. We have to commit our Keiko's aid. Um,
yeah.
and there goes our turn 2 defense on our side, and now we're going to struggle to build again. It really feels, and we're sacking another foundation. This is kind of the opposite of what I said going into this game,
Right.
where I wanted to see a strong foundation base on Peak side so we could overwhelm Rue's stats later.
It,
We're kind
it's
of going in for it on turn 2.
It's rough because it looks like we had all the tools for success. We just got baited by the fact that our character says first enhance on it. Like, I truly
Yeah.
believe that we just got baited by our character having a first enhance that kind of dictated how we wanted to play the turn, when in reality, if you play the battle aura, you draw an additional card, you use the botons, you pump the damage, you leave all these beautiful resources in your stage. You've got the weapon clash to generate free value, you've got the falling heel strike to reuse it and use those foundations,
Yeah.
to pump stats with peak. Like, we had so much going for us, and instead we destroyed basically everything on the first 2 attacks, where we could have ended up with 5 or 6 foundations before we even started building the ones from our hand, David.
And we have nothing to show for it. Both attacks were
Well,
completely blocked.
we have Ryu blocked with 2 Attack Titans Haymakers. That's not nothing,
That's
but
not nothing, but they weren't gonna
it's
play both of them on their turn, and they only having to build 1, so this feels almost like Even though Pieck went first, we're right back where we were in game one, where the tempo has swung to
Yeah.
Ryu very quickly in this game.
It's not nothing, but it won't pay the bills, as my mama used to say. So we're gonna have to figure it out from here. And really, I mean, we have the knowledge. We can see what's in both players' hands, right, from this angle. If the Ryu just builds right here, I think he wins the game on the spot. I think if Ryu just builds 4 here, oh, okay, we're not gonna get that. So there is a
Well, this
chance
one's
for
kind
Pete.
of free. It's kind of free because it readies something.
Is it though, David? Is it? We can see what's in Noah's hand.
That's true. That's true. Not free when the showdown comes, but the
Yeah.
showdown is going to force Pieck is going to have to blow up a resource here, and the only committed resource is Keiko's aid. So I'm happy if they blow up Keiko's aid, and there
That's
it
true.
goes. Yeah.
I guess, yeah, if you don't I guess if you don't want to risk it, I would risk it at this point. I would just try to keep the one foundation and just try to check the 5, you know? And we even have the moment of normalcy coming down. So we're basically in the same position that we started with because moment of normalcy gets readied for free. We should have never destroyed a foundation, David. I'm never
Yeah,
listening to
that
you
was.
again.
Now we're completely
We
committed
destroyed a
out.
foundation for nothing.
Yeah, I think that's a win on Ryu's side because we got to use our character to draw. We can then just choose to build here. Pieck is not going to have a backswing in all likelihood on only 2 foundations. Never say never, but um, we got them to destroy Keiko's aid. Like I'm
That's
pretty happy
true.
with that.
Yeah, well, considering the way things shook down,
Oh well, I'm very
um,
surprised at this.
considering the way things shook down, this works out really well for Ryu, even with the showdown block coming in, because we do get the guaranteed check on top. So we do get to continue being a little bit aggressive here. And, I like to talk about the game within the game. And, Ryu might realize that spending a few minutes here attacking and making the opponent potentially worry about this attack has more value than the actual board state right now. But I do think it's time to get a good build in. It's time to, progress our board because Pieck can absolutely rip off 32 damage from 2 foundations. We've seen it plenty of
Yeah,
times before.
that was a pretty disrespectful play to play the Tri-Gravity. I don't hate it personally. It's
Yeah.
coming back to bite us with the 2-3 checks on the foundations here on the build. But I don't mind building up the momentum in a repeated and bullet kicks deck, and being a little disrespectful when we forced our rival to go to 2 foundations. But it could bite them. But 32 is a lot to chew through.
Yeah, if I had seen like a defensive use for the momentum, like a hacker or something, I'd be like super down with it. Although again, hacker is kind of in that weird place where flipping anti-Titan artillery is probably really helpful to Peak right now. But we do see a little bit of the sideboard tech here, that true 100% unleashed getting drawn here. So if things do get dire, we have a little bit of a get out of jail free block.
Yeah, true and
We
100% is one of those cards that's like a little bit more allowed to be played with sweeping daggers out of the format.
little bit, yeah, that's true. The Nick Reagan decks of the world, the combo 60 card Nick Reagan list is definitely eating a lot better. Um, we got Sacrifice for the Cause coming in now. That's going to be a potentially really strong one because when Peak goes to pump damage, that is still an ability that reduces damage. So we could see a theoretical world here where Sacrifice for the Cause effectively keeps us alive by canceling a character ability, which is a really cool thing and not something that you see too often. But Peak's definitely got to get something going here because Ryu is still at full health. Ryu now has rifle arm, moment of normalcy, double incubating, double keeping area or keeping area safe. So even like a stun 2, the first stun 2 gets pretty much ignored. And
Yeah.
we've got the fateful decision. So we've got a repeatable breaker that we can add to our blocks throughout every turn. So
Yeah, this is going to get a ton of damage here. Not too much speed, and
I don't know.
I would be
5
pretty
speed's
surprised
pretty
if we
good.
don't see moment of normalcy just come into play. Yeah, take it back to 3 and then use our
Yeah.
incubatings from there or something.
Yeah, 5 speed, and I believe that's what 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 damage. So 8 mid for 13 is pretty solid for a 6 diff, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Moment of Normalcy just says that this is actually the weakest 6 diff you've played all day.
Yeah. What I want to see from Pieck is them on a poke turn choose to not use the first enhance and just build. It's almost like King Ghidorah, you know. You just want to enter the enhance step to get your free build as Pieck.
Correct.
King
Yes.
Ghidorah just wants to enter the enhance step to go grab their favorite foundation or
Yes.
something from the discard pile to build.
It's funny because that the character says first enhance for a reason, and the reason is not to encourage you to do it first all the time. you know, it says first enhance because sometimes you should just not be doing it, and you should instead be generating the resource first. So it's tough. This is a really powerful character, and it's so difficult to press the buttons on peak and feel like you're making a mistake. And that's probably credit to the designers for making a high octane full throttle character, right? Like it's so hard to press a button on peak and feel bad about it.
Yeah, and I like just the sheer number of choices that Peak presents in a single turn is astronomical, and so it's one of those characters that you can kind of grow with as you play the game. You know, every 10 games that you play with the character, you're like discovering new play patterns that you could be using.
Yeah.
I'm surprised by how hard Peak is going in, spending resources on this true 100% that I just feel like in no world is doing damage.
Yeah, correct. If it does, it's a tragic accident that Ryu doesn't have a mid block, I suppose, because it looks like we got the bullet kick coming in as our block here.
Yeah, spending a
That is
good
a
amount of
+2 mid
resources
block.
on it, but let's see what the follow-up to this true 100% can be after we kind of blew up our stage. And
And we pretty much just hard blocked that, right? Like, we used uh oh, it looks like we did have to use the moment of normalcy at some point during that. So moment of normalcy is committed. But we
yeah,
do
it might have
still
been loss of consciousness that sealed it.
yeah,
The loss of consciousness came into play at some point there. Yeah,
that is a
Chomp
good pickup.
coming in to follow this, get the moment of normalcy out for the future,
Just
and
get it
then
out permanently, yeah. Build our own moment of normalcy. Okay, that's all right. We might not win the round, but Noah got to at least kind of swag on his opponent. That's pretty funny, dude. Chomp your moment of normalcy and to immediately build my own moment of normalcy is actually kind of tight.
yeah, this gets us to a pretty decent stage. Let's just see if we can survive with this stage going into our turn. And it looks like Ryu did not draw super hot here. It might just be that besiege.
Yeah, I think the Ryu is just big chilling here. I mean, we're at full health, we're up a game. They gotta know that the round is pretty close to over. All you're really trying to do at this point is not throw the end of this game too. And granted, the more resources Pete gets, the faster Pete plays, the scarier this can be. I mean, one of the scariest things Pete could do right here is, actually like play a super fast turn, like just build 2 or 3 cards, maybe I think we saw a chomp, like do a chomp, build, pass back to the rival, and basically say either you got to waste all the time left on the clock, or I'm going to get one more turn with even more resources and a better like hyper sculpt. But yeah, we see the reaction here, the chomp into the earth shaker here. This is very much supposed to just be a deck that plays it on a 6 and checks a 5 sometimes, but it's never happening.
Yeah,
This is
this has
like
been
you
a
were talking about it
magnet for
earlier,
three.
David. This is planned difficulty. Noah wants to play this on a 6. This is a scripted, part of the game plan, and it's just not working out.
Yeah. Um, I just don't think we're going to be catching Ryu without a low block here. Um, we'll see.
No, with the Ryu's got what 5 cards in hand. it'd be so rare, you know, it would actually just be so rare that um I would be truly blown away. And I mean, even if we did, right? Even if we did deal damage with this Earthbreaker, you know, what are the cards that we're going to be destroying? The keeping Ares safe, you know, like theoretically good value because they would be ready when they get destroyed because they were committed during this attack. But yeah, we see the incubatings coming in. We see the stun 2 getting nullified. Ryu is just set up to deal with everything Pieck is doing.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very, very healthy board state here.
Like this is like watching an anime duel, you know, where like the villain has the actual correct answer for everything, you know? Oh, you want to stun me? Oh, it's stun 2. Well, I have 2 Aries smiles, you know? Oh, I put this 6 check on top of my deck so I could check it now.
Yeah, and here comes the low block. It's on a foundation. We could choose to put breaker 2 on this foundation. Let's see if that gets flipped here. Looks like maybe
Yeah.
not. We're choosing to jump into Ryu.
Yeah, technically a little bit of a potential mistake to commit the sacrifice for the cause. Not something you think about using defensively,
Yeah.
because it cancels abilities that reduce damage, but that could have been something that we used during Peak's turn. However, definitely not feeling the pressure, definitely not in any danger. We're still full health. We are still full health, David. And, you know, with only 3 minutes left, I mean, Peak's going to get maybe one more turn. The way things typically go in UniVersus, Ryu would just draw the actual gasoline here and just light things on fire. So we'll see how
Yeah,
this goes.
this Ryu deck feels kind of like a slow, methodical deck, though, where it's really wanting to build up on its momentum.
It's playing a very, I'll say, normal game of UniVersus. It is punishing you for blocking it with actual value based actions like drawing
Mhm.
cards and checking better. It's utilizing the fact that, you know, Ryu is not very keyword gated to play cards like Besiege. You know, he's mixing and matching attack packages. The punch synergy is, you know, definitely at the forefront. I mean, repeated 100% smash has always been an absolutely amazing card, but the biggest
Mhm.
thing is the checks. I think the biggest thing for sure is Ryu is not checking poorly because that's what he's good at. That's what his cards are good at. And when you're not checking poorly, you get to build better, right? You get to poke effectively, you get to build your hand out, and because Ryu draws so many cards to refill that hand, it's allowing us to generate those extra resources by playing the cards. We're actually playing
Mhm.
the cards from our hand, and it's just it's a very like normal use of the game mechanics instead of you know, building things from discard or searching our deck for things, right?
Yeah, we get to add a card to our hand with Ryu. We get to scout with his foundation. He has that 6 check that he can add to the top of his deck.
Yeah,
That's tenacious.
if he's not beating you on the value of like each card that he draws and like each card that he checks, he's probably not winning the game, right? Because Ryu does not give better stats than Pieck. If it was just a game of who can pass, you know, who can play better statted attacks and pass block checks, Pieck would win that every time. But the fact of the matter is, Peak's losing multiple foundations from their stage every turn, and Ryu is just adding cards to their stage, and that's how he's got to win games.
Yeah, and
But
it hurts to see, but on the peak side, on a lot of the attack strings, we're only building 1 card after it.
right,
So after that turn 1 build, we really haven't seen the stage get to a healthy spot. And here comes the handshakes, realizing that I assume overtime was just announced. It feels a tad bit early to me. But overtime was announced. Peak went first, and handshakes can't get the kill in time.
yep. So that's gonna do it. Ryu on the void symbol, Tio taking it down round 1. So very exciting stuff. If you guys have any character requests down in the comments, you know, we're always paying attention. We're always trying to serve the people what they want to see. I'll tell you right now, partner, I want to see some seven hand size action. I want to see some high difficulty four checks. Everyone told me that sweeping daggers was effectively banning colossal confrontation out of the format. I want to see people put their money where their mouth is and start bringing those attacks out. So that's what I'm looking for the rest of this event.
Yeah, I'm looking for Sung Jin Woo. I want to see the updated skill tree, the Shadow Monarch experience bundle really come into play here and shine. I know there's a couple of players here today on the new Sung Jin Woo, so I would love to at some point see that character in action, see what the new skill tree brings to the character. But yeah, that's going to do it for round one. It took almost the full time, so that means that we're not going to have a lot of time for a break here between round two. So we'll be taking off here just for a little bit, but I would suspect that in just a couple minutes we'll be right back on.